the more I learned, the more I was fascinated. So, ultimately, all these bakeries were like, Michael, stop, like stop coming in, like go and bake your own bread.
Michael Kalanty is a professional bread baking author, bakery product developer. He's written baking curriculum for culinary schools across the United States, and he has 2 books, How to Bake Bread, How to Make More Bread. Michael talks about his bread making journey and how he is an instructor at Wood-Fired University. Here's Michael. Okay, Albert Grande here. I'm talking with Michael Kalanty, a noted sourdough expert and bread baker. And how's it going today, my friend?
Oh, this is great, Albert. Thank you so much for taking time to have me on your show today.
Sure, I'm honored. Hey, Michael, tell me a little bit about your own journey. How did you get into making bread and how you got into doing sourdough?
Wow. Well, those are two different journeys. So let me
Okay,
let me do the first one.
sure.
Uh, how I got into baking bread. I was an architecture student in grad school, and I wanted to do my thesis on the flying buttress technology of the medieval cathedrals like Chartres and Amiens and Notre Dame and Reims.
Okay.
So I said, well, I gotta go to France. I gotta live there. So I went and did my research and everything. Spent about a year, and every town you go to where there's a cathedral, and of course I'm summarizing in a way, but when you come out of the cathedral, on the right hand side there's a pharmacy, and on the left hand side there's a boulangerie. There's a
Okay.
bakery. So I could not go into work any day without passing one of these bakeries. And growing up, literally in a mall in like New Jersey, to see this type of, I'd never been exposed to this type of food, this type of baking, etc. Certainly the aromas, and to see the ardor, the almost religious fervor that the bakers were working with. It was mesmerizing. So I started to come a little bit earlier every day, and ultimately I was just they gestured me in after, they were like, "Oh, just come in and see what we're doing,"
Yeah.
and they let me wash pots for them and things like that. I was like, "This is just fabulous." So I worked that arrangement and was able to get to the point where they were letting me measure ingredients on their scale. And, this was something that, from America, we had never seen things like that. We
Sure.
used cups and spoons and things. So it was a revelation to me. So anyway, so I came back to US, finished what I needed to for school, and then went back and apprenticed at that one bakery where they had taken me in. And that was really the start of how I learned pastry, and then ultimately baking. So I went to France as an architect and came back as a bread baker. So
Well, that's quite a journey. And somehow in there, you fit in sourdough. So how did that fit into your, but I'm gonna, and again, assuming that the bakeries in France, their breads are not sourdough bread, correct?
You know what? That's not true so
Okay.
much anymore. At the time when I was there, there was some of that, but a lot of it was commercial yeast like Active Dry and things
Sure.
like that, or baker's yeast, of course, with overnight fermentation. There was always the slow fermentation, making the dough one day and letting it sit overnight. And so there was always that. But, at the time, there was also a big move towards industrializing the making of baguettes and things like that. So sourdough, natural leavening kind of took a back seat to a lot of this. And it was only Oh, really? Like recently in the last, like, let's say 2 or 3 decades. I mean, in the whole history of bread, that's pretty
Sure.
recent. That bakers were like, no, we're going to go back to this. We're going to go back to this method and make this like, natural leavening. It still is not used to that great of a degree in baguettes. I'm focusing really on baguettes because
Sure.
sourdough baguette needs a little help in rising in time because the sourdough, it takes so long the baguette loses its shape. So I'll switch now and talk more about the boule, the pain de campagne, the large rustic loaves, and those really they really benefited from that revival of the artisan type of bread baking. So they don't use it a lot and they certainly don't use it a lot in pizzas or things like that. But it is a very strong part of the backbone of French bakeries to have sourdough, like, boule,
Sure.
things
So,
like that.
and you bring up a very interesting point for me, a novice baker, bread baker, pizza maker, natural leavening. So that is, you're making bread or pizza dough without using yeast, correct? As an additional,
Well,
um,
so when I say natural leavening, I'm talking about a sourdough starter,
okay,
a madre, other names are escaping me right
sure,
now,
sure,
and this is from the yeast that is naturally found on the grain. It's on the
okay,
it's on the outside of the grain. So when that's ground and then that goes into water, right away those enzymes are activated. They start to digest the starch and provide sugar for the wild yeast that is present already on the grain. And that's the birth of, a little sourdough starter right there. Of course, the technology is, as you use some and take what you need, then you replenish, you feed it, you nourish it. So it lives on and on. And that's really the heart of that technology.
How did you get into making sourdough, Michael?
So I was teaching at the California Culinary Academy in San Francisco, and we had a 7-week curriculum on all kinds of breads. And we started out with lean breads and we went into soft breads. We even had donuts and fried breads and on and on and on. And there was one week dedicated in the curriculum I had inherited to sourdough. I said, all right, well, let's, we'll learn some stuff about sourdough. And I enlisted bakeries in the San Francisco Bay Area, like Acme Bakery, Artisan Bakery in Sonoma with Craig Ponsford. And I said, hey guys, I don't know a whole lot about this. I'm going to come up, I'm going to work on your bench a couple nights, and, I'm going to learn how to do a couple breads so I can teach the students.
Sure.
Well, that was like a gateway right there. And the more I learned, the more I was fascinated. So, ultimately all these bakeries were like, Michael, stop, like stop coming in, like go and bake your own bread. And
Okay.
so it really so sourdough just became something that instead of isolating it into one week of the curriculum, I actually started it on day 2 of the 7-week program.
Okay.
And I had students and I said, okay, we're gonna grind up whole wheat berries and we're gonna put them in water and we're gonna let them soak and we're gonna take that yeast and then we're going to start to feed it. And so we did that week 1, week 2, week 3, it's starting to bubble up. Week 4, we're cleansing them. By week 5, we have powerful starters that have aromas typical of the Bay Area. And then we start baking breads with it. Well, by this point, the students are hooked. They are so hooked. They own these things. They gave birth
Right.
to them. They
Sure.
gave them names, and it was great. And so really that was really the beginning of my fascination with it.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Um, if you don't mind, I'll take a step back. Tell me the difference between, say, regular bread that's just made with yeast and sourdough bread. I know it's a simple question.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, how long is this interview? Because I can give you so many. Basically, here's how I would explain it to a student on day one.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's make bread. And let's make baguettes. Let's take flour, water, yeast, and salt. And let's take a commercial yeast like Active Dry or Instant or Rapid Rise. Let's take something like that. So the functionality is, let's hydrate that yeast in some water. Let's add some flour. Let's add some salt, and let's develop it. Let's knead it so that it has some strength.
Right.
We'll let it rise. We'll punch it down. We'll let it rise. We'll shape it. We'll proof it. We'll bake it. We'll eat it. All within like 3 to 4 hours.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And so that's what bakers call a straight dough method.
Right.
And just, I mean, we're gonna mix, and the next thing you know, we're putting ham and cheese on it, and we're having it for a lunch.
Sure.
So, that's a basic bread. It functions. It's a carrier. It has some characteristics. You can put things in it, and then you can put butter and sugar in it, and you can make it be different kinds of breads,
Sure.
like challah, and you can braid it, etc. But the whole idea is, bing bang, you're done.
Right.
Sourdough, on the other hand, says, okay, so we don't want to use this Active Dry or this Instant or something like that. We want to take the natural yeast, which we find on fruits and vegetables and grains. A lot of that white cast that you find on grapes, that's yeast. Wild yeast is attracted to this.
Okay.
And so let's take that and let's cultivate it. Let's give it a community, a farm. Let's give it a mass of flour and water, and let that wild yeast have at it. Let's let it consume its starches and create acids, flavorful acids, lactic acid, acetic acid. And this is what gives the flavor quality to the breads. So now let's take that flour, water, yeast, and salt that we had before, and instead of a little packet of Active Dry, let's take, a handful of this sourdough starter that we've been cultivating for, in my case, 31 years. And let's put that in there. And then the flour and the salt.
Okay.
The same process happens. It's going to rise. We're going to punch it down. It's going to rise. We're going to shape it. It's going to proof. We're going to bake it. But instead of taking 3 to 4 hours, this can take, really, if you're doing it right, I want to say 3 days.
Okay.
Only because I've already said three, but certainly you can do it in two.
Right.
And so it acts slower. That's the major difference. That's the
Okay.
major difference right
Yeah.
there.
Okay. I just think it's a fantastic taste. I really like sourdough. It really is has a very distinct flavor. And you mentioned that you have a starter or a mother, if we will,
Hmm.
that's 31 years old. And
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, it's been taken to the sourdough vault. Is that correct?
It has actually. I call it the Sourdough Hall of Fame, only
Okay.
because it's like, I think it gets the point across a little bit quicker. But there is a sourdough museum, a sourdough vault. It's in Belgium, Saint Vith, Belgium. It's operated by the Puratos company, and they have a number of sourdoughs in their collection. Mine, Lucky Lady is her name. She's number 99 on the roster. So she's got her slot on the upper
Okay.
right of one of the refrigerators. And what Puratos does with that is they take it, they do the genetic sequencing of it to
Oh,
determine what strains of yeast are in there and what strains of bacteria are in there. And
wow.
because no two sourdoughs are the same, and one of the reasons is that they have the bacteria on from the hands of the baker that has mixed them. And so mine is in there. So mine is
Okay,
in
that
there.
that's just incredible. And they keep the museum and again a good question. They keep it alive, they keep your yeast active, or is it
Yeah.
how do they keep it?
No, they do. They
Wow.
don't feed it. They don't feed it daily as we do in the bakery, but because they keep it much colder and they let it ferment, and they're interested in all sorts of scientific aspects of it, like what sort of alcohol does it give off, and what are the flavor characteristics of the starter as it ages, and I mean they're like a science
Yeah.
museum for
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
And
Basically, what is the difference between regular bread and sourdough bread? And we had talked about how your lucky lady is in the Sourdough Museum, which is quite an honor in and of itself. And I was just wondering how they kept it alive. That's just fantastic because sourdough is a living thing, right?
it's a living thing. Yes, it is.
And
And I'll tell you what. I teach sourdough classes like every other week at various schools in the Bay Area, and to professional bakeries that are looking to like put in different systems and things like that. But there's always an anxiety among the students, among the bakers, like, oh, what if I kill it? What if I kill it?
okay,
There's
yeah,
this
yeah.
fear. It really is, it's almost immobilizing in some cases. I say, well, how come you never did it? And you're like, oh, I know I would kill it. And, really, when you think about it, I mean, sourdough starters have been around thousands and thousands of years.
Wow.
So, you really can't kill it as an entity. Maybe you can abuse your little container somewhere, but, it's not going away. The process is really so simple. You have to take some out and feed it some new.
Okay,
And you just have to do that with some regularity. That's
right.
that's that's all you have to do. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's
That's
that
one.
easy. It's that
And
easy.
yeah, and it sounds like you develop a relationship with it, such as Lucky Lady. You have a relationship with your sourdough, with the mother. Is that what we're going to call it, the madre, or
It is a
yeah,
mother. It
yeah.
it it is a
And
mother.
and out of
Yeah.
this one piece, countless, who knows, hundreds, thousands of pieces of bread or pizza or whatever. Correct?
Well, and for me, one of the best rewards. I mean, the whole thing is rewarding. Just being able to like talk to you about it and share the information with people who like maybe somebody, maybe there's just one person who's like, I'm gonna make a starter today. I'm gonna do that. Then that's. But the thing to me is that well, I teach a class and everybody goes home with some of Lucky Lady, 31
Ooh,
year old Lucky Lady, right? That's
yeah,
this
yeah.
side benefit of coming to one of my
Wow.
classes.
Take class. Okay.
And but what happens is as soon as they take it and they leave, it's going to change.
Okay.
And wherever they take it, the ambient the bacteria in the air, the yeast in the air, etc., it's different. The pH of the water is different. Everything is different. So whatever you start with is going to change into something else, and it's going to become more of you.
Ooh. A little scary, but
Yeah.
that's real. But that's no, that's fantastic. So not only did it start as Lucky Lady, but then it kind of transforms into your own signature and your own heart, so to speak, inside the sourdough. Let me ask you another question. What are some of the benefits? And I know there are some to eating sourdough. And is it more digestible? Is it easier to consume?
So I always have the disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. Okay.
Okay.
So whatever I
Yeah.
say
All
is
right.
only anecdotal, things that I've observed, and stuff I've learned from talking to people who are doctors and gastroenterologists and things like
Okay.
that. So here's basically what happens. This is yeast eats the carbohydrates in the dough and it eats them. It belches out the carbon dioxide, but it converts them into sugar. I mean, well, it's eating the sugars that comes out of that.
Right.
And then from that, it creates its flavor acids and things like that. So in the process, it's breaking down the carbohydrates. In fact, it's in a way pre-digesting them.
Okay.
So the longer that process takes, right? Let it go one overnight, let it go two overnights, more of the starch is digested. So when you consume that, it's easier for your body to metabolize those sugars.
Okay. That makes sense. It's easier on it's easier on the stomach to
It's
to
easier on your
consume.
stomach. You're
Yeah.
familiar with the blood sugar measurement. What do they call that? The glycemic index,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it goes from 0 to 100. The closer to 100 it is, the more pure sugar it is, and the more when you eat it, you're going to get a blood sugar spike, and then you're going to crash, right?
Right.
So let's say that white bread, this like 4 hour baguette that I made from active dry yeast, et cetera, has a glycemic index of, let's say, like 85%. All right. I don't know if that's
Sure.
accurate, but it's sure not wrong. Now,
Okay.
that same formulation, if I were to replace the active dry with sourdough starter and let that ferment over 2 days, the glycemic index of that bread lowers the longer it ferments in the refrigerator.
Oh,
You
okay.
can bring that down to 60%.
Okay.
And what that means is you can eat it without as much of a sugar spike because it's preliminarily digested.
Okay. That makes total sense. The another question is when you talk about fermentation, you're making your bread or pizza dough for fermentation. Is it a cold ferment or is it like a room temperature ambient ferment? How does that work?
Okay. So, all right. So, just to recap real fast, fermentation is the action of microbes on a food mash. So, in this case, flour and water, right? Breaking it down, creating alcohol, creating flavor acids, et cetera, right? Grapes turning into wine, potatoes turning into vodka. All right,
Ooh,
just to
okay.
make sure that we're all clear on that. Um, Here's a very interesting thing that I discovered from all of my work to date. Ambient temperature, floor temperature, 65 to 80, 85. Don't go higher than that, please. The yeast is dominant in that regard, in that environment. So the yeast will eat the starches, convert them into sugars, and create more yeast.
Okay.
Then, so that helps with the leavening. Now, when you take that and you refrigerate that and you bring that, I mean, in a bakery we like to keep it about 50 degrees, but you certainly can do it in your home refrigerator, which goes down to like 40. Just keep it on the topper shelf because that's a little warmer. In that environment, the yeast slows down and the bacteria that are present have the opportunity to eat the sugars that are remaining. And it's very strategic that the bacteria are able to select and eat the sugars and the starches that the yeast have left behind. So
Okay.
it's like an all-you-can-eat buffet for the yeast when it's warm, and then for the bacteria when it's cold.
Okay.
So that's
Well
what
stated.
happens.
Yeah.
And as a baker, you develop the sensory perception of saying, okay, when I ferment the dough for this long cold, it tastes like this, it gets more sour. Ooh, it's too sour. I won't go that far. So you create what is the best combination of ambient fermentation
Okay.
and refrigerated.
Okay. Well stated. Michael, along your journey, you've got, well, we talked about two books. You have your initial book, which is How to Bake Bread. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, that was the one that I wrote while I was teaching at the California Culinary Academy. And it was basically because I was given a skeleton of a curriculum and a stack of random recipes from a cadre of former instructors and said, here, like, teach this. And I was like, okay, wait, we need to organize this
Okay.
for students to learn. And so I wrote I organized each one of the weeks to a different category of bread. You know, the lean breads that we were talking about, like the baguettes and the bagels and the pretzels. And then we're like, okay, let's talk about soft breads, breads that have a little bit of sweetener in them, a little bit of fat, like honey whole wheat bread or maybe challah. And now let's talk about rich breads with lots of eggs, like the sticky buns and things like
Okay.
that. So and then in the process, I was like, you know what? This looks like a great structure for a book. So that's how
Okay.
that's
Okay.
how that came to
That's
be.
great. So that was How to Bake Bread. And then your second book, which just came out, we take it a step further.
Well, the second book is How to Bake. It's actually its original issue when it came out a couple of years ago was called How to Bake More Bread,
Okay.
and it focused specifically on sourdough. And and the problem with that is that Google will not recognize that title as being a sourdough book. So when people
Okay.
go in and they say, "Oh, how do I make sourdough bread?" My more book does not show up because Google says I can't see the word
Sure.
sourdough.
Right.
So what we did was there's a company in the UK, it's URL, it's ckbk.com, which is like the word cookbooks without its vowels. And they're a cookbook sharing platform, a la Spotify or something like that. So you
Okay.
subscribe, and then you can go through any of the cookbooks that they have in their library. And then you pay per download if you want to, like, drag my honey rye walnut bread sourdough out, and then you want to do that. So we just
Okay.
went live with that the beginning of this week, and we changed the title to How to Bake Sourdough Bread
Okay.
so
And,
that Google could find it, and so could yours.
okay. And that's available at ckbk.com. We'll put that right
Yes.
out
And
there
you know
for
what?
you
Of course,
guys.
with all these platforms, you sign up, you can have a week free trial,
Sure.
etc. So I'm just one of I don't know how many thousands of books are in there, but check out sourdough. That's what we're talking about.
Okay. That's great. Hey, let's go into a little bit different direction. You also have quite a relationship with Fire Within. I know that you are a teacher there. How did that come about?
So Firewithin is a mobile pizza oven like manufacturer. Yes,
Yeah,
that's what they do. They
exactly.
manufacture the
Yeah,
ovens,
they put it
and now
together
they
right.
manufacture the trailers as well.
Yep.
So the owner operator Ajith Damawarda met me And I was speaking at the International Bread Symposium at Johnson and Wales in North Carolina several years ago. He approached me and he said, "You know what? I like what you're talking about. Come and teach a class to my students." And I said, "Tell me about you. What do you do?" So they make these mobile pizza ovens. And when you buy one, when you commit to being an operator, they have seminar weekends, a long weekend,
Right.
wood-fired university. So you go, you learn the ins and outs of how to run the business and all that kind of stuff, how to get like your purveyors for your products in your area, etc. And then they have bakers, pizzaioli, people that make dough come in, and there's a lot of hands-on. Here's how to make dough, here's how to store dough, here's how to shape it, bake it, etc. There's classroom activity, and then there's like outside, like firing, like
Yeah.
so.
So
Your
it's a
meals
real
come from things you make yourself, etc. So
right. So you've got the kind of the workbook kind of stuff, and then the hands-on stuff that you
yes.
get right into it. It must be pretty challenging working with people, and I'm going to assume some of them have little to no experience with making bread or doughs.
You know what? I'll tell you what. It's a gamut. Everything is a gamut, and it's a bell curve. And there's people over here that they're like, I don't even know how to make pizza. I have no idea. And then you have people over here who's like, yeah, I'm a baker now. I want to make pizza. But mostly
Sure.
people are in the middle. But the thing is that I approach my classes always from like, okay, let's establish a platform of learning. This is what I understand is the case, like how I explained how to make the baguette to you earlier. And whether you never even saw bread before, or even if a master baker, you're like, okay, I understand how this guy is talking about bread now. So I established that, and I go, okay, now let's go on top of that. Let's make our flour selection and see if we want it to stretch a lot or if we don't. And then so everything is building, and it works for everybody across the board, because if you take the time to just say, all right, here's where I'm coming from, and then take the people one step at a time, then they can go with you.
Okay. That
And so
yeah,
that's
that sounds fantastic. Can you give me a brief outline of like, the classes that you teach there?
I think they happen quarterly. Here's new operators
Yep.
that come in. The classes are in Denver, and I'm in San Francisco. So and they spend a lot of time talking on just the operation, like how to like move this 3 ton or whatever it is thing down the highway. So they don't need some sourdough guy from wherever to come and help them with that. At least once a year, I think it's twice a year, they have an advanced wood-fired university. And that's where people who have already been to the first one can come back to take their learning to the next step. That's where I come in,
Okay.
because these are the people now. We've dragged this thing around on the highway. We've taken it to the state fairs. We know what to expect. We know when to put a tent up, when not. They know the logistics. Now they're like, okay, help us dial in our dough. And that's where I come in. And I spend the time talking about how long you want to ferment your dough. What is the shortest amount of time you want to do it for? What's the longest of time? And work with the operators and saying, well, I only have 2 days to make dough. What's my best way, et cetera, et cetera. Because it's personal, it's alive, and it's going to behave you know in the way that, I mean, you got to maximize what you have.
Sure.
So we spend our time more in that regard. What kind of flour works better if I can only retard my dough one day? What kind of flour works better if I want to retard my dough or ferment my dough 2 days? Because
Okay.
there are different types of flour. They're entirely different. So that's where we focus our time.
Right. Oh, I got to say, that sounds fantastic as a novice. Some people think flour is flour, but it's not. I mean, there are many different kinds of grains, many different types. And a flour is going to determine what your final product is going to be. So that sounds fantastic. Anyway, very educational, certainly from my point of view. Um,
I think it just occurred to me after Albert, if I can just jump in.
please.
It just occurred to me. I don't think I'm pretty sure the reason Ajit has me come to the advanced wood-fired universities is not because I have my own pizza oven, I drag it around, or I've won awards for like the best pizza in the world. It's not for that. It's because I'm the dough guy. And to me, like you can have the best sauce in the world and you can have the best toppings in the world, and people do. But if you don't have the best dough to put that stuff on, you, you're not making the best pizza. And so, when I teach, we focus really exclusively on the dough. And people
Okay.
are like, "Oh, I want to put pesto on." I'm like, "Okay, fine. Do that when you're home. Right here, right now, we're putting this fresh tomato sauce on, and we're putting this blend of, whole milk and skim cheese, and that's what we're doing, and that's all we're doing." So,
Right. Right.
because we, we care about the dough. What about the dough when it's at 600 degrees? What about the dough when it's at 580? It's different. What about the dough when it's cold outside? And it's all different. So that's where I teach the operators to focus.
Okay. I mean, that sounds fantastic because I would have to agree. And you can have a great pizza, but unless you have a great dough, I mean, to me, that's the determining factor. It doesn't matter what you put on or how high quality your ingredients are. That is irrelevant. Dough is king as far as I'm concerned. And so it all starts with the dough. And
Yeah,
I'm glad
don't
to hear
don't
that.
don't say that to the cheese vendors and the Roma tomato guys. No, do not say that to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because their quality ingredients does make a difference. It
I
really does, of
does.
course it does.
Yes.
But the base, literally and figuratively, is the dough. So start
Absolutely.
from there, and then let's put your good cheeses and sauces on top of that.
Okay, perfect. Michael, thanks a lot for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it. What advice would you give to someone that wants to go to Wood-Fired University or thinking about it?
Inquire, go, call Ajit, go on their website, say, send me more information, say, hey, I want to talk to a live voice. You can talk to one of the chefs or to Ajit himself. He's very generous with his time. Just inquire and read all about it because the website has so much detailed information on it and a
Okay.
lot of photos and everything. Like, here's what we did. I think they're up to like their 50th or 55th or something like that. Here's what
Yep.
happened at the 44th. Here's what happened at the
Sure.
19th. And you can see, I mean, if you're interested, it's going to spark, it's going to spark the fire within. Really,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't believe even
Oh,
I'm
well
saying
stated.
that. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Michael, how can people find out more about you? I know you have your cookbook at ckbk.com, and I'll put links below this video. And how can people get your other book, How to Make Bread?
So the I'll tell you what, I'm on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. My most I mean, anything that I really do, like stories that I write and things like that, I'm going to post them on LinkedIn. So
Okay.
find me on LinkedIn, and because I really, I speak to the professionalism of the industry and all that stuff. So but the best place is just michaelkalanty.com. I mean, if anything,
Perfect.
before I put anything anywhere, it goes on the homepage of the website, and then I
Okay.
just watch how people react to it, and then I file to the next thing. So
Sure.
that's the easiest place to find
Okay.
me.
Well, thanks a lot for spending time with me, Michael. Really appreciate it.
Oh, really? Thank you. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, I appreciate it a lot. Thank
Okay.
you.